This is your essential business briefing. I'm Stephen Carroll. Coming up, the new wave of cyber attacks. Why are more companies falling victim to ransomware, and what can be done to stop it? The ABCs of NFTs. We'll explain how these digital certificates work and find out how they could become an important source of income for artists. And we take you to China for a special report on the country's booming property market that's causing concern for the authorities. A major American oil pipeline, the world's biggest meat processor, and Ireland's health system, all victims of cyber attacks that have had profound consequences on their operations. These hacks, often using ransomware, are happening more frequently than ever and having a greater effect on the running of businesses and organisations. In the United States, it's led the White House to beef up the cybersecurity requirements for companies that work with the federal government. For more on this, let's speak to Adam Myers, who's Senior Vice President of Intelligence at the cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike. Adam, thank you very much for being with us. Why are we seeing, at least what appears to be, so many more successful cyber attacks recently?
Well, I don't think that we're seeing more of them. I think we're hearing about more of them. In this year alone, we've seen over 1,000 of these big enterprise ransomware attacks, what we call big game hunting. And the average ransom demand is somewhere around $5.7 million. And on average, we're seeing about 45, 46 of these per week. So I don't think that we're seeing more of them in volume. I think, we are, but not that much more. I think what we're hearing about it more from the media because it's starting to get people's attention.
Do we have any idea who's behind these attacks? Is it sort of usual culprits in your world, or are we seeing an emergence of new kinds of cyber criminals?
That's a great question. It's both. We're seeing the usual culprits who were engaged in bank fraud and wire fraud activities. And we're also seeing the emergence of what we call ransomware as a service, or ransomware as a platform, where the criminal actor builds this ransomware tool and the back end for managing the payment and the receipt of the payment. And they then will allow others to rent that. And so effectively users can go and get all of that ransomware tooling, and they pay 25, 30% fee for using it from the ransom demand, but they're able to kind of leverage this platform.
If companies are finding themselves hit by ransomware, should they be paying up? We know the Colonial Pipeline operators paid millions in a ransom. They got most of it back in the end, but is that the right approach? What do you do if you're hit by this?
It's a tough question. I know a lot of times organizations don't have a choice but to pay. They'll be out of business if they don't. But I think that the best approach here is to have a really strong defense. And organizations should be thinking about this now, investing in cybersecurity, investing in the people that are securing their systems, and making sure that they make themselves a harder target, because they can't put their head in the sand and hope it's not going to happen to them. It's going to happen to them. And so a little bit of investment now will mean that they're going to have less problems later.
Is it just the technology they have to invest in to protect themselves? Is there always going to be an element of human error when it comes to potentially falling victim to one of these attacks?
Well, it's technology, and it's training for people, and it's reviewing process. I mean, some of the things that organizations can do right now that are free, you don't have to invest really any money in, is to do what we call a tabletop exercise, and kind of go through and get the senior management together and say, hey, if we got hit by ransomware, who would do what? How do we restore from backup? You could have the best backup solution in the world, but if you've never tested it, if you don't know what you're going to do in the event of a ransom attack, then you're going to fall on your face as soon as you try to do something.
Is there a pattern in who's a victim or a target for ransomware attacks?
They seem to go after organizations that have to be up and running. And when they have downtime, the decision to pay the ransom or not becomes much more critical. So in other words, manufacturing, industrials, energy, healthcare, organizations that will have negative impact if they are offline. And, with manufacturing, every second you're offline can be measured in dollars and cents. And so those organizations are looking at that clock effectively. And when the amount of money they're losing is greater than the ransom demand, it becomes a no-brainer to pay it.
In your experience, is the public sector more vulnerable than the private sector in this?
No, it's both. I think, we've seen a lot of targeting of state and local government. We've seen targeting here in the US of school districts. And we've observed lots of targeting of technology and manufacturing. And it's really opportunistic. Like I said, there's 46 or so of these events on any given week. And that means that there was probably a few hundred attempts that weren't successful. This is coin operated. They're trying to make as much money as possible as quickly as possible. If they can't get in, if you're too hard of a target, they're going to move on to something that's easier.
Has ransomware in that way replaced the traditional, what people consider a traditional cyber attack of stealing data from companies? Is it kind of a shift in that industry?
Well, the data theft, I think, was a lot more, like nation state espionage related activity. What has been replaced is a lot of the bank fraud, a lot of the stealing people's bank account and trying to make large transfers or do what we call account takeover. And so that kind of criminal enterprise has been replaced by a lot of this ransomware attack.
Can companies be forced to do more to protect themselves? I know there's a discussion happening in the US about that at the moment. Is that the right approach?
Well, I think we've seen in the US here that standard-based security has kind of failed in a lot of ways, what we call compliance or checkbox security. And organizations, if you give them a set of things that they have to do, they're going to figure out the minimum amount of things that they need to do to be able to say that they comply with that. And so I think we really need to be pushing best practices and getting organizations to understand it's in their best interest to make wise security decisions and investments in order to protect themselves.
Okay, Adam Myers from CrowdStrike, thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you.
Now, earlier this year, a 10-second video by the artist Beeple broke records when it was sold at auction for $6.6 million. The work was authenticated by what's known as a non-fungible token, a concept that's growing in popularity as more people seek to own pieces of digital content. Kate Moody's here with more on this. Kate, can you please explain what is an NFT?
Well, I can try to explain it. NFT, non-fungible token. Non-fungible meaning that it's unique and one of a kind. It's a digital asset based on blockchain technology, which authenticates and proves ownership. That's what underpins cryptocurrencies as well. But while Bitcoin, for example, is fungible or interchangeable with other Bitcoins, an NFT cannot be replicated. NFTs encompass all things digital, a drawing, video, or a piece of music, or even, as we've recently seen, a tweet.
Concretely, how are NFTs being used?
Well, the biggest market in terms of overall numbers of sales has actually been sports-related. Video clips of game highlights or memorabilia linked to a specific player, sort of like digital trading cards. That's followed by gaming and metaverse or augmented reality NFTs. Despite recent high-profile sales, art and collectibles so far represent a relatively small percentage of the market. In the music industry, artists see this as a chance to connect directly with fans, but still track ownership in a way that streaming platforms don't allow. Kings of Leon and Grimes have released songs or full albums as NFTs. Only a certain number of copies are sold, so they're limited edition or collectibles. Over half of music-related NFTs are by independent artists or brands looking to cut out the middleman.
Digital assets like these have existed for years now. Why the sudden boom in this area?
Well, it's partly because during the pandemic, people have been spending more time at home and more time online. But it's also because more high-profile celebrities, artists, and musicians are getting involved. NFT sales spiked to $176 million in a single week at the start of May 2021. Some insiders say this could be a speculative bubble. Others argue that NFTs are the future.
Okay, Kate Moody, thank you very much for that. Next to China, where authorities have been trying to take the heat out of the booming property market. President Xi Jinping has called for a clampdown on property speculation, while the rules for getting a mortgage have been tightened up. Despite these steps, figures from April showed house price increases in 70 cities across China. From Beijing, our correspondent Charles Pellegrin sent this report.
In China's biggest cities, it's hard to look up without seeing a crane. They are the bellwethers of growth, but also of booming housing prices. A boom that's forcing many out of the market. making it more difficult to sell apartments like this one.
这个是一个大一居室，82平米，现在报价是600万，比去年同期的时候大概涨了10%。
To spur growth after the pandemic, China eased credit for businesses, but many use these loans illegally to invest in property, driving up prices, and authorities are cracking down.
一旦发现，甚至就是你就房子都买不成，甚至你买了以后也是要给你撤回来的等等。
Beijing has made its position clear with a slogan: houses are for living, not for speculation.
When a lot of people speculate on housing, it simply drives even what should be affordable housing, for example, studio type apartments, 1-bedroom apartments, out of the reach of a lot of, especially young people.
Despite tougher rules on mortgages, property is still an attractive investment in China. But people are reticent to speak about it publicly, like Diane, who is looking to buy a new apartment.
I think this apartment would mean both security and investment to me, because I already have this 2.5 million. Instead of, I don't know what else I could do with it with better return.
Authorities are considering further measures to clamp down on speculation, including imposing a property tax.
That's all from us for now, but you can find all of our previous episodes on the France 24 website. And you can get in touch on social media with your comments or questions. Until next time, thanks for watching.
Worldviews. France 24 brings you all the news from hotspots around the world. In Asia, the Middle East, the Americas, Africa, and France. From Europe to Oceania, take a daily trip across borders to keep abreast of all the latest international news. Get exclusive updates from our correspondents around the globe. Our daily reports will take you to all 4 corners of the world. Every day, watch World Views on France 24 and France24.com.